Hi everyone, and thank you for subscribing to my channel. Today I want to speak about a big public relations stunt that took place in Ireland on Friday. Everybody has probably seen it at this stage, where it was around a deportation flight that took place that was chartered by the Irish state at a cost of €102,000 for 32 Georgians who were deported back to Tbilisi in Georgia. Now, what was really interesting with this was the whole optics of it and the propaganda piece being pushed by the media and the political establishment. Jim O'Callaghan, since he's come into the position as Minister for Justice, Migration and Home Affairs, has said that he will be firm and fair system on immigration and to apply the laws of the land. Now, let's cut behind the public relations stunt and the optics behind this and what they won't tell you. We've seen many people say this is a good start and all this type of stuff, but really, if you look behind the figures, you'll see really what's going on in Irish society, and it's nothing of the sort. And of course, O'Callaghan has been a member of this government for a long number of years, and I won't see a dramatic shift for a man who's willing to stand up with the Irish government and with their masters in Brussels about the immigration chaos that's being created to benefit the very wealthy in Irish society. Now, really what's important with this, over the last year we've seen a big increase in net migration. We've seen the population increase to nearly 5.5 million people, and we've seen people like Micheál Martin say that it's good to see an increase in population, and we all already know about the pressure on basic services and the pressure that would put on accommodation services as well, while the wealthier in Irish society still get wealthier. And what's really fascinating with this is the amount of Georgians, which is deemed a safe country since 2018 in the international protection system. There's still 2,990 Georgians still in that system. Currently there's about 33,000 people in the system, and last year it cost €1 billion. Now, this is what's really important around this. Across the European Union, the acceptance rates of Georgians that come through international protection is less than 2%. Ireland has the fourth largest amount of people that come from Georgia across the European Union. We're below France, Germany and Italy, and not that far behind Italy really in terms of overall numbers. This is just remarkable when you consider the population of Ireland in comparison to countries like Italy, France and Germany. In 2017, I'll tell you a little bit of a background on this. Back in 2017, Helen McEntee, of course the Minister for Justice, who's now Minister for Education, became Minister for European Affairs, was appointed by Leo Varadkar. And over the next year, she became Vice President of the European People's Party, which in Europe, which Fine Gael is a part of. And really what's important there is that the European People's Party has been pushing this agenda around shared responsibilities for migration. Here we have it, the EU Migration Pact, and we all know about the loss of sovereignty with the EU Migration Pact. Now, in 2017, an ambassador to Ireland from Georgia, I think the man's name was Giorgio Kelashvili is the ambassador's name. Now, he spoke back in 2017 about setting up a friendship group between the Georgian parliamentarians and the Irish parliamentarians. And this was set up. And also what it was set up was a Georgia-Ireland Business Council. Interesting. But listen how it all fits together. Because a number of years ago, Georgia was made a EU candidate state, and it was the intentions were to move it towards an accession state for the European Union. And we saw before, back in 2008, or even earlier, the use of Georgia, for instance, with the 8-day war against Russia. Hence it ties into what's happening today in terms of Ukraine being used by NATO and their proxy versus the Russian state as well. Now, it's interesting because back in 2019, the ambassador spoke to a Dáil committee, and he actually spoke to a Dáil committee in an Oireachtas committee back in 2022 and 2023 also, I think, as well, where he spoke about that most Georgians that come to Ireland are economic migrants, not refugees, because it's deemed a safe country. Ireland deemed it a safe country back in 2008. And around the same time, 2021 period of time, after the report by the Central Bank in 2019, which stated we needed more cheap labour, migrant cheap labour, most notably, and this is part of it, the rejection rates of people who failed their applications to come into the state dropped dramatically from about 5 or 6% to over 70%. Now, isn't this interesting? Now, when you look across the European Union, the rates are amongst the lowest in Ireland in terms of international protection or asylum seeking protection. was about 10 to 11%, where other countries in terms of Georgia, which had slightly higher amount than Ireland, had rejection rates of up to 95, 96, 99% of people. Now really what's important here is that very few of these, even enforcement notices or enforcement or deportation orders also as well, weren't even enforced. Only a really small percentage were enforced. And of course we saw Roderick O'Gorman tweeting in 2022 about looking at people that come into Ireland in various languages, and in terms of, we've seen the explosion, as I said, in population, in particular since the Ukrainian refugee crisis, where over 112,000 came here, and that's part of an EU temporary directive which is due to be extended in 2020, or due to be stopped in 2026, and could be possibly extended beyond 2026. And we've seen the pressure that has put on services as well, because of people already struggling with the housing disaster, the homeless disaster, the health chaos as well, while the wealthy in Irish society are doing quite well from this, using their cheap labour and benefiting with huge profits at the expense of ordinary people, while we see the younger generation of Irish people being forced to emigrate. And really what's fascinating in here is the move as well towards the work permit system in Ireland, and how it's moved in terms of Georgians. Last year 40,000 work permits were issued by the Irish state, and I spoke in a video about that, and I had a link in the comments below a few months ago about the work permit scandal, where they do this labour needs market assessment, and essentially what that is, looking at various parts of the sectors of the economy, such as retail, construction and so forth, and to look for labour shortages in those areas, and to look for cheaper labour where they can exploit, and landlords can exploit as well. And this has been part of the process to transfer it across into the work permit system from the international protection system. So again, we've seen more of the same nonsense with this PR spin that was portrayed in the media on Friday, for instance. Absolutely just remarkable. But behind it, there's been a lot of stuff going on in the last number of years, and we've seen the push towards the EU Migration Pact in particular, because of deliberate failures by the Irish state, done deliberately, to create the chaos. And now they're going to come out and say, we're going to ride into the sunset and solve the issue because of the policies that they have created. And of course, Jim O'Callaghan, who was all over the national airwaves talking about this as a good success for Ireland in terms of trying to be tough on immigration, he's just diverting the attentions from really what's going on. And of course, they've been part of the ones creating the problem in the first place. So don't fall for any of their public relations spin, don't fall for any of their nonsense. Ordinary people, wherever they're from, are being targeted because of this, and being used and exploited, and just used for their economic value, rather than being dealt by as decent people. And when they talk about a system itself being a racist system, for instance, people talk about those things, this is complete and utter nonsense, because they've always spoke about the white European narrative in terms of the Ukrainians and in terms of the Georgians as well. So inherently themselves, they have been discriminating against other people without a doubt, in terms of what they've done. But of course they'll distract you, they'll use all kinds of smears, names to try and target people. But these are the real facts behind what's going on with the public relations stunt that took place a number of days ago. And of course, always look at the work permit system and see how that's been changed and been opened up and been widened and made more flexible, and who will profit from it. A lot of these agencies in various countries will profit from it. Some who are exploiting people, essentially a legalised form of human trafficking to extract big profits for the employers, big employers, at the expense of ordinary people who will suffer. But of course, where the unions of this, they'll say absolutely nothing. They've been completely captured by the Irish state rather than standing up for the needs of ordinary people and the repression of wages. Ireland is a low wage economy, 1 in 5 workers are on low pay. And this is important that this video gets out there, because this is the reality to what's going on in Irish society. Already we've seen the pressure on accommodation systems with the services as well, and also we've seen the absolute destruction of so many people's lives in terms of the neoliberal policies, and we see a wider move now in Ireland in particular to drive towards a war economy and to build a military industrial complex and profit them and cut back on public spending. And Mario Draghi in the European Union has been speaking about competitiveness, and this is what it's all about: another race to the bottom, a drive to the bottom, looking for more extraction of profits and widening inequalities in society to push more people into poverty and create a bigger divide in society where people, more and more people will struggle. But people need to speak out about what's going on and know the facts behind what's going on and no, don't mind for the smoke and mirrors and all this type of nonsense, and just speak about really the truth to what's going on in our society and who benefits from what is going on. So absolute nonsense being portrayed by the Irish media in particular around this. So let's cut behind the spin and tell the real story. So thanks for the support, really appreciate it, and please share my videos, and thanks for subscribing to my channel. So from Dublin, Slán, take care, bye bye.